So far we've talked about in this chapter mitosis and asexual reproduction, which is where cells make exact copies of themselves. The chromosomes line up, they split in half, the chromatids break in half, and each new cell is completely identical to the original cell. So in this section of the chapter, we're going to talk about meiosis or meiosis, and this is a way of producing what are called haploid cells, cells with half the chromosome number. And this way, when these cells get back together, we can make an offspring through sexual reproduction. So your cells have 46 chromosomes, but they're not completely different from one another. They are technically in what are called homologous pairs, and there are 23 of these homologous pairs. So if I was to draw out all 46 chromosomes, I would have 23 sets, 23 of these pairs of chromosomes. One set came from my mom and one set came from my dad. So when I go to have offspring, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out of these 46 chromosomes, I only want to give one copy from each pair. So egg cells would only have 23. Sperm cells would also have 23, and when those get back together, we would get the full 46 again, which is what our normal body cells have. But it can't just be any 23. It's not like my chromosomes. I could take my chromosomes, throw them all up in the air, pick 23 of them, and that would be an egg. It needs, since every pair of chromosomes has specific information, so pair number 1 has specific genetic information for doing certain things in your body, and pair number 2 has information about different things in your body, and pair number 3, and so on. So I need to make sure that it's not just any random 23, it's going to specifically be one copy from pair number 1, one copy from pair number 2, one copy from pair number 3, etc. And so the focus of this section is going to be on meiosis, that specific process by which we go from 46 chromosomes in a cell to 23, 46 being called our diploid number when the chromosomes have a partner, and 23 being our haploid number when there's only one copy of each different type of chromosome, and then this prepares for sexual reproduction. All right. Body cells are also called somatic cells. That's another name for them. And your somatic cells or body cells have a specific number of chromosomes, and it is called your diploid number because it's the number when your chromosomes are all in pairs, in homologous pairs. So for example, in humans, our diploid number is 46. We have 46 chromosomes in our body cells when they're paired up, and there are 23 pairs, or what are called homologous pairs. Now, what's a homologous pair? Well, what that means is that, for example, let's say this is chromosome pair number 1. You have 2 copies of chromosome number 1. One originally came from your mom, and the other one originally came from your dad. Now, homologous means similar, but not necessarily identical. So let's just say chromosome 1 determines your eye color. You have one copy of chromosome 1 from your mom. Now, maybe your mom has blue eyes, so maybe the gene that's on chromosome 1 from your mom is the code for making blue eyes. And the one from your dad, the matching one, it would also have the code, the locus for eye color on chromosome number 1, but maybe your dad gave you the gene for making brown eyes. And then this is where genetics would come in with dominant and recessive and all that. But the important thing, what I want you to understand is if chromosome number 1, and we could also draw them this way, before they become X's, chromosome number 1 has the gene for eye color, and it has the gene here for blood type, and maybe it also has some gene to make some enzyme in your body. Both of your copies of chromosome number 1 would have those 3 genes. Now, they might code for different eye colors or different blood types, but they're gonna, if eye color's on chromosome 1, then every single person in this room will have 2 copies of that gene, and it'll always be on chromosome number 1. So, body cells, specific number of chromosomes. In humans, that number is 46. I should clarify that it's different for every organism. Some people were a little confused about that. So our diploid number, the number of chromosomes when our chromosomes are in pairs, is 46. But like in horses, it's 64. In ducks, it's 80. In fruit flies, it's 8. So each organism has its own specific number of chromosomes, and it's always the same for that organism. So just a heads up on that. Now, it says, are all of your chromosomes fully homologous? Meaning, do they match completely? And the answer to that is actually no, because you do have one pair of chromosomes that might not match. So let me explain. Your chromosome pair number 1 should be completely homologous. Every gene on one should be on the other one too. And again, what I mean by that is if eye color is on this chromosome 1, eye color should be on this one as well. Doesn't mean it's coding for the same one. That's not what homologous means. It means that the gene for that trait is located in that spot. But you do have one pair of chromosomes, the sex chromosomes, in us anyway. Not all organisms determine sex the same way, but in mammals, it's determined this way. And if you are a female, then your sex chromosomes are homologous. They match each other. You have 2 X's. But if you're a male, your sex chromosomes are actually not homologous. You have an X, and you have a second one called Y, and the Y chromosome actually has completely different information than the X. Like, for example, the gene to see color for color vision is on the X. So if you're a female, you actually have 2 copies of that gene for color vision. But if you're a male, you only have 1 because the Y chromosome doesn't actually have that gene on it. So technically, no, all of your chromosomes are not fully homologous if you're a male. But if you're a female, then technically they are. So this is showing a pair of homologous chromosomes. And notice how they've sort of color-coded them. See how the bands all match up. In other words, this yellow band on this chromosome is also found in the same place on this one. So this is a matching pair. Again, even though this chromosome is an X, this is still one chromosome. This is its partner. In G1 of the cell cycle, these partners would not look like X's. They would look like sticks, like this. They would still be a pair of homologous chromosomes. These 2 sticks would not be identical to each other. It would be half of this one, half of this one, and then during S, they would have duplicated. So, all the cells in your body that have 2 copies of each chromosome are called diploid. So our diploid number is 46. It means our chromosomes are actually in pairs. There's 23 pairs. The cells in your body that only have half the chromosome number, which are called haploid cells, those are also called gametes. And they only have 1 copy of each homologous pair. And any organism that's going to reproduce sexually is going to have a haploid version of the cells and a diploid version of the cells. So this is an example in humans, right? Our haploid cells are the sperm and the egg. They don't live on their own, right? They don't go and have a life. They pretty much live about 24 hours or whatever. If they get together and fertilization happens, then you get a zygote. That's a fertilized egg, which is diploid. They represent diploid with the number 2 in, and haploid is in. In is sort of like that baseline number of completely different kinds of chromosomes. And then that cell would go through mitosis, specialization, and grow into you, a multicellular organism. All right, so what happens in meiosis, this process to make sperm and eggs? Well, 2 main steps. Step 1, which is called Meiosis I, the chromosomes are going to line up. But they're going to line up, instead of lining up in a straight line, they're going to line up side by side with their partner. And instead of the chromatids splitting in half, in other words, the X's are not going to split in Meiosis I. The partners are going to split in Meiosis I. And so in Meiosis I, you're actually going to go from 46 chromosomes down to 23. In this cell, we started with 2 chromosomes, and at the end of Meiosis I, each cell only has 1 chromosome. So the pairs split. And then the second part of meiosis is called Meiosis II. And in Meiosis II, that's where the actual chromatids split. So one of the differences between mitosis and meiosis is that in meiosis, you end up with 4 cells total, not just 2. But the 4 cells that you make are haploid. They only have half of the original chromosome number. Here was the original chromosome before S. There were 2 chromosomes in there. And now at the end, each cell only has one chromosome in there. So the chromosomes duplicate, but the cell divides 2 times. When they say the chromosomes duplicate, they're talking about S. So originally, the chromosomes look like this in G1. Then in S, they look like this. But what's going to happen in meiosis is, again, the homologous partners are going to pair up. And a special thing is going to happen here called crossing over, which we'll talk about in a second. So it turns out that the homologous pairs, when they line up side by side, they don't just line up side by side. They line up so close to each other side by side, like this, that they actually wrap around each other. It's called synapsis, and pieces can actually swap places. So imagine that these chromosomes, they line up side by side, but then when they come back apart again, you actually have this. And this is happening every time your cells go through meiosis, and it's random where it happens. So notice what happened here. Now, these 2 spots swapped places with each other. That's called crossing over. So that means now the 2 chromatids are not identical to each other anymore. And this actually increases all the possible variations in our offspring, because we don't just randomly pass on 1 copy of chromosome number 1. The copy that we pass on might have a piece of its homologous partner that swapped places. So it's actually pretty cool. So meiosis I, the pairs are going to split, and each daughter cell at the end of meiosis I is going to only have a single set of chromosomes. It's not going to have partners. And then in meiosis II actually looks just like mitosis. It's where the chromosomes themselves are going to split in half. So here's a picture. This should help. So this cell has a diploid number of 6. This is meiosis I, and they're showing crossing over. See how these little pieces are going to swap places with each other in random spots. But these are our 3 chromosome pairs, 1, 2, 3. In meiosis I, notice what happened. The chromosomes lined up side by side with their partner. If this was mitosis, it wouldn't look like that. It would look like this. Now they have it kind of sideways. We've been drawing mitosis vertically. But if this was mitosis, it would look like this. The chromosomes would line up in a straight line. And the offspring cells would each have 6 chromosomes, just like the original parent. But that's not what's going to happen in meiosis. In meiosis I, the partners split. These are still X's, but at the end of meiosis I, each cell now, instead of having 6, only has 3. So these cells are now haploid. They only have 3 chromosomes, not 6. If this was you, this would be 23 from 46. And now here's meiosis II. Crossing over doesn't happen a second time. The chromosomes split. The chromosomes now line up in a straight line, but notice there's only 3 of them. The chromatids split. The X's are actually going to split, and you're going to end up with 4 cells total. So, if a cell is haploid, and each cell has 2 chromatids, they want to know what meiotic stage this would be. So here's kind of an overview. So let's say we had 6 chromosomes. In meiosis I, they would line up with their partner. Meiosis I. At the end of meiosis I, we would be down to 3. Not with a partner. Then in meiosis II, the X's would split. So now these would be 6. Did we change the number of chromosomes in meiosis II? No. There was 3 chromosomes here. There's still 3 here. But now there's 6 instead of X's. So that's the difference in meiosis II. So if they line up in the center, what stage of meiosis is it? It must be meiosis II. Technically, this is called metaphase II. When they line up in the middle with their partner, this is called metaphase I of meiosis I, and this is metaphase II. So, mitosis and meiosis, to both start off diploid, but this is probably the takeaway. Mitosis made genetically identical diploid daughter cells, just like the parent, but meiosis makes 4 genetically unique haploid gametes. And this is just another diagram of it, and I do have a little quick animation if we don't run out of time. Here it is, crossing over, meiosis I, meiosis II, 4 cells. So that's kind of an overview of meiosis.